And please join me in Gasho. Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs. Next, we'll have the reading. We're going to be reading actually the our pledge, and you'll find it on your screen. For those of you here in the Hondo, you have to look up onto the screens. This, our pledge is actually something that is written by our Gomonshu. Gomonshu is the head of our Jodo Shinshu organization, and he wrote this about 4 years ago now. And this sort of was an update of what we call the Shinshu Pledge. And he wanted to write something that was more appropriate or more in tune with the present times. So he wrote this, our pledge, and we've been reading it quite regularly at our services. So we'll read together. Our pledge. Breaking out of my shell, I shall carefully share a warm smile and speak gentle words, just like the kind Buddha. Not becoming lost in my greed, anger, and ignorance, I shall be open-minded and act accordingly, just like the calm and peaceful Buddha. Not putting myself first, I shall share in the joy and sadness of others, just like the compassionate Buddha. Realizing the gift of life we have received, I shall live each day to its fullest, like the Buddha who continues to emancipate all. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Next, we'll have the Suture Chanting. We'll be starting off with the Sambujo. The Sambujo is the symbolic calling. It is a calling to Amida Buddha, the Buddha of infinite light and boundless compassion, to Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha, and to the Buddhas of the 10 quarters, announcing the beginning of this service. For those of you here who are here at the temple, you can find the Sambujo on page 89 of your purple seiten, the purple text. Following the reading of the Sambujo, we will then be chanting the Sambutsuge. The Sambutsuge you'll find on page 73 of your purple seiten. During the Sambutsuge, I will be bringing up the names of the Shotsuki individuals who we are honoring and remembering today. And when you see the name of your loved one, if you wish to come on up and burn incense, please do so. If you are not here for the Shotsuki, but are just attending the service, at the end, if you wish to come up once everybody has, once the Shotsuki people have come up to burn incense, you can also come up and burn incense at the end. Okay, so we'll start off Sambujo, followed by Sambutsuge. Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs. Please join me in reading the English translation, which you'll find at the bottom of the text. We respectfully welcome Amida Buddha to our temple as we scatter flowers of joy. We respectfully welcome Shakyamuni Buddha to our temple as we scatter flowers of joy. We respectfully welcome the Buddhas of all times and places to our temple as we scatter flowers of joy. This morning, we have gathered here in the quietude of Amida's temple to commemorate the May 2022 Shotsuki monthly memorial service, in which we remember loved ones who have passed on during this month of May. We faithfully recite the Nembutsu and humbly join our hands in Gassho. May the fragrance of incense teach us the purity of our intentions. May the beauty of the flowers offered remind us of the glory of the Dharma. May the lights that burn brightly upon the altar lead our thoughts to Amida's eternal light of wisdom and boundless compassion that dispels the darkness of our ignorance. No moments. No moments. Go.
「
조세머리 조각은요 고래제모 가이모요지 사마이지에 이덕음을요 주족의우 인다이세네 조버드오가이 그진진노 그거가이나이 무묘요근우 세상야무 니나시시 진덕음을요 그거다 지혜지며 거묘이소 신노다이세 강가사붓 다이쇼 아노조지 미브예닷 어세조이 가이니조지 녀세사마이 지혜이죠 고세덕읍은 의여시가 이사이그그 이사다야 계시읍은 야그센노그마 무료다이쇼 준yo고자 그여이사이 시도쇼분 은여그도 겐조흑약 인여고자 쇼부드세가이 무가게 무슈세스도 오묘시쇼 엔시쇼곡 뇨세쇼지 이진난요 요가사붓 고그도다이치 고식이며 도조조셋 고그녀나여 님은 어서 가노아이미 노다드이사이 지모라 계라그안노 어버드시오 내가 신쇼 어드가 너희 리기조조역 제모세서 지혜무게 조려시서 지가신경 계려신시 조그도그즈 가교조지 ninja Please join me in reading. Oh, actually, there's two more names. Sorry. Please join me in reading the English translation of the Sambutsuge, which you'll find either on page 79 of your text or on the screen here. Sambutsuge translation. Your face shines in great splendor, boundless wondrous dignity, such the greatness of your light, beyond all comparison. Brightness of the sun and moon and the shining money jewels, when compared to your brilliance, seem to us like blackest ink. Tathagata's countenance transcends all comparison. The great voice of awakening resounds throughout the 10 quarters. Your precepts, learning, effort, meditation, wisdom are virtues beyond all compare, ultimate, supreme, and rare. Your deep meditation has fathomed all the Dharma sea to the limits and the depth of all things the Buddhas teach. Ignorance, anger, and greed, the world-honored one has none. Like a lion among men, measureless your great virtues. Vast are your great virtuous deeds. Your deep wisdom is profound. Your radiant luminous light shakes all the world's foundations. When I become a Buddha, equal to the Dharma king, I will transcend birth and death liberating all beings. My giving, discipline, precepts, patience and effort, meditation and wisdom shall be supreme, unsurpassed. When I attain Buddhahood, everywhere fulfill my vow, bringing peace and tranquility to all beings in doubt and fear. There are myriads of
beyond measure,
beyond count.
and great sages, numberless, like the grains of
Genji San. I will honor each of them. Even more importantly, I will seek the supreme way, even though all Buddha worlds are countless as Ganges sands, even though all lands and realms are boundless without measure, yet my light shall reach them all and illumine every place. Such shall be my perfect work, such my power infinite. When I attain Buddhahood, my land will be first and best, place of practice transcendent, its people sublime and rare. My land is like nirvana, beyond all comparison. In my sincere compassion, I will enlighten all beings. All who come from 10 quarters to be born into my land will be pure, filled with gladness, peace, and great tranquility. O Buddhas of the 10 quarters, this my true revelation. In this way, I've made my vows, and I will strive to fulfill them. Buddhas of the 10 quarters, with your wisdom unimpeded, may I always call on you to reveal my intentions. Though my body undergoes so much pain and suffering, I will persevere and strive patiently without regret. Namo Amidos, Namo Amidos, Namo Amidos, Namo Amidos. Just change this one. Spotlight. Okay, good. So once again, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see people here in our Hondo again, and it's also nice to have you join us by Zoom. For the foreseeable future, we will continue to have the Zoom connection as well, because some people may not be able to attend in person, or some people just may not feel comfortable yet coming into the public. So welcome either in person or by Zoom. I'm going to begin my Dharma message by reading a passage from Shinran Shoni's, or from the Tanisho, which was actually written by a disciple of Shinran Shoni. His name was Yuyenbo. And I'm going to, and this comes from what we call the postscript, or at the end of this work of Tanisho, Shinran, Yuyenbo is quoting some of the things that Shinran Shoni, his teacher, had told him. Shinran Shoni, for those of you who may not know, is the founder of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. And his scroll is actually to the right of Amida Buddha. Okay, and he lived approximately 900 years ago. He was born in 1173. So you do the math, how long ago that was. Okay, so and it's his understanding of what we call the Nembutsu teachings that we follow here at our temple. And so I'm going to read this passage from the Tanisho. In truth, myself and others discuss only good and evil, leaving Amida's benevolence out of consideration. Among Master Shinran's words were, I know nothing at all of good or evil. For if I could know thoroughly, as Amida Tathagata knows, that an act was good, then I would know good. If I could know thoroughly, as a Tathagata knows, that an act was evil, then I would know evil. But with a foolish being full of blind passions, in this fleeting world, this burning house, all matters without exception are empty and false, totally without truth and sincerity. The Nembutsu alone is true and real. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Kind of a complicated passage to say all things in this world are totally without truth and sincerity. That's a very, very harsh message that Shinran says. But in fact, what this is talking about, he's actually going to the roots of Buddhist principles or Buddhist teachings. And one of the things that Buddhism says is that, of course, we have what we call the truth. And in the Buddhist teaching, what truth is that all things are made up of interdependence, because of causes and conditions, things come about. So even something like myself, I think I am this person, but I am made up of many, many causes and conditions. Okay? So the people on Zoom, you think you are seeing me, but you are actually seeing a digitally produced broadcast of myself, right? So you're not actually seeing me, you're seeing an image of me, right? And then people here, you think you're seeing me, but you're only seeing one facet of me. You're not seeing, the anxieties I had before getting up this morning. I have to give another Dharma talk. You don't see all that's behind this face, right? You just see what's in front of you. And we tend to think we know what is true and real. But in fact, we're only seeing parts of truth and reality. Later this month, I'm going to Winnipeg 2 weekends from now. It's the first time I'm flying in over 2 years. The last time, let's see, this was, okay. Last time I was supposed to fly was in December of 2019, okay? Just as the pandemic was starting to ramp up. Okay, they hadn't quite restricted flights yet, but I was actually supposed to fly to Toronto to do a service in Toronto. And I remember my wife and my daughter were telling me, Dad, maybe you shouldn't be going because the numbers in Toronto of the pandemic was going up. And I was thinking, no, I should go. I feel that I'm obligated to go. But in the end, on the morning that I was supposed to fly out, I canceled. And then the pandemic hit and nobody could go anywhere, right? So anyways, this is the first time in over 2 years now that I'm actually going to be getting on an airplane. And I have some reservations, more to do, I think, with the headaches involved. I just read this morning that they're saying you should go 3 hours ahead to YVR because the security line is so long now, apparently. So I'm not really looking forward to that. But as I was thinking of my flight, it reminded me. I always think whenever I go on a flight, I recall one of my incidents that happened, and many of you have heard me tell this one story before about the flight that I was having. And again, that was actually going from, that was when I was still in Toronto. So I was going from Toronto to Vancouver, actually. And then on that flight, this was in the, you'll know how many years ago this was, because it was when the first online cafe started. So prior to this, when you went on Air Canada, you automatically received a meal. And you had your choice. They'll say chicken or beef or whatever, But then they went on to this in-flight cafe where you actually had to order food if you wanted food. They weren't serving it automatically. And so I remember getting on the airplane in Toronto, and I personally like the aisle seat myself, right? I like to sit, because if I have to go to the washroom, I don't have to climb over anybody. Anyway, so I got in, I settled down, and then a little while after, a gentleman came by. And it's funny, I don't know if you do this, but if you get on the flight first, you're looking to see who's going to sit beside you, right? And you're hoping it's somebody slim or somebody not too big, right? Just because the space that's taken up. But anyways, this gentleman sat beside me, and he was a little bit on the heavy set side. And so we both settled in, and everything was fine. And we took off, and he decided once we leveled off, he was going to have his meal. And so he brought out a Tupperware that he had brought. He was about to have this. But in the meantime, the person in front of him, I guess she was tired or something, she reclined her seat. And now in the coach section, when the person in front of you reclines your seat, there's not much space between you and the seat in front. So if they recline, it's very hard, especially if you're a little bigger. Even myself, I'm finding it now to open up your table, right? And so this gentleman was having difficulty because it would hit his stomach as he was trying to open it. And of course, he was getting a little frustrated by this. And he tried getting this person's attention, but no matter how hard he tried, they weren't responding to him. And at that time, the flight attendant came by, and he asked them, if they could do something about it. And the flight attendant said, well, because they're not serving meals automatically now, it's basically up to him to deal with it. I was surprised by that answer. But anyways, so this went on for a little while. And finally, he gave up on eating. And when he went to put away his Tupperware, he actually pushed the chair in front. And if you push hard enough, even if it's reclined, you could actually push it forward. And he actually pushed the chair forward, at which point the person in front then responded saying, do you mind? I'm really tired. I'm trying to rest. And the gentleman said, well, I was trying to eat. And you didn't. And they started quarreling, the two of them, right? And from that point on, every time she would try to recline, he would actually lift his legs up so to prevent her from being able to go back. And so this went on for a little while. And in the meantime, the flight attendant came by. And now the lady in front, she complained to the attendant saying that the person behind her was not allowing her to recline. And every time the attendant would come by, of course, he would put his feet down and act like an innocent person, right? So after a while, so the attendant said to the gentleman, she said, well, there are some empty seats at the back. Would you like to have one of those seats? And the gentleman said, no, I paid for my seat. She should be the one to move. And then so the attendant asked her if she wanted to move. And she said, no, I don't want to move. I prefer being close to the front. And if he's too large to sit in coach, he should get someplace a larger seat. So anyways, and then the attendant looked at me kind of shocked and said, has this been going on all the time? And I sort of nodded. And then they asked me if I wanted to move. And I said, no, that's fine. So anyways, after that, everything sort of settled down. And we landed in Vancouver. And just as we were deplaning, right, they get off row by row. And as she gets off, she turns around and she says to the gentleman, she says, you're a man, grow up. And without batting an eye, he said, you're a woman, I'm not listening to you. And that was the incident that happened. And many of you heard me talk about this. But as I mentioned, one of the things about Buddhism, they talk about not seeing things reality as it is. And in the heat of the moment, it's very easy for us to forget who we are or what we're doing. And as Shinran said, if I could know thoroughly, as Amida Tathagata knows, that an act was good, then I would know good. If I could know thoroughly, as a Tathagata knows, that an act was evil, then I would know evil. But with this foolish being full of blind passions, in this fleeting world, this burning house, all matters without exception are empty and false, totally without truth and sincerity. The Nembutsu alone is true and real. As I mentioned earlier, Shinran is reverting or restating basically the Buddhist principle that we only see parts of the truth. We don't see the whole truth. And in order to see the whole truth, we need guidance that's beyond us. And this is where this Amida, the Tathagata, comes in. This is where Shinran says the compassion of Buddha allows us to see the greater sphere of things, the greater oneness that exists. If we look at our world today, we all think how foolish it is what's going on in Ukraine with Russia. From our vantage point, we can see that this is just a ridiculous thing that's happening, but in their situation, they have blinders on and they're unable to see the larger picture. Similarly, we think we are right, or we are good people. We see what atrocities are going over there. And yet, in our own little world, we probably are creating harm and disharmony in our own lives as well. And so Shinran reflected on all this and said, for me, I'm not the one that could actually point fingers at others and say how terrible they are, because I too am full of blind passions. And it was only through reflection, through hearing the calling voice of the Buddha, that Shinran realized his imperfections, his blind passions, and realized that when we truly awaken to the teachings, we are brought to encounter the great compassion of the Buddha. And the words of Shinran were so powerful that it affected people hundreds of years. As I mentioned, he was born in 1173. So over 800 years ago, he was born. And yet, throughout history in Japan, and then later as the immigrants crossed over from Japan to here to Canada, the teachings remained true. And the teachings remained as a foundation to give peace to those who were here. It is said that the early immigrants in Canada, how Jodo Shinshu came here was because there were Nembutsu followers here in Canada. And when tragedy struck, many of them were laborers in the early 1900s that had immigrated from Japan to Canada. And when tragedy struck, they needed to conduct services. And so they wrote to the Honganji, our mother temple, asking to send over ministers to help serve the needs. And this is when Reverend Senju Sasaki came over together with his wife as the first Kaikyoshi minister to Canada. And it was Senju Sasaki and his wife who started teaching the Nembutsu teaching. And so from that point, and that was 1905. And so from that point on, over 117 years have passed. And how many lives has this teaching affected or supported? And as we gather here for the Shotsuki monthly memorial service, we realize too, our loved ones who passed away during the month of May, how has this temple supported them throughout their life? They came to the temple for many different functions, whether it was for a Shotsuki service or whether it was for a bazaar. They shared in laughter, they shared in tears, but it was part of their support. It was part of the oneness that they shared. And it was the part of the compassion of the Buddha. And so when we realize this, the oneness that exists, we are brought to put our hands together in gratitude and appreciation for Shinran Shoni, for our ancestors, but mainly for the Dharma, which tells us there is something more than what we see in front of us, that there is a greater oneness that exists throughout. So at this time, I'd like to ask you, please join me as we express our gratitude and appreciation. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much. And we will close the service with the singing of the Ondoxa. I'm just going to bring it up. I'm just bringing it up on the screen for those at home. Oops. Hang on a second. Let me just. Oops. Hang on. Just give me 2 seconds there, Genevieve. I have to bring it up. And I have to share this with. So it's on 307 of your proposition, or it's also on the screen for those of you who are here. So if you're able to, please rise if you're in attendance. Please be seated. Thank you all for attending our Shotsuki monthly memorial service for May. Just to let you know things that are coming up. So next week it's Mother's Day, so don't forget that. Next week is Mother's Day. And then I'm away the following weekend, as I mentioned. I'll be out in Winnipeg to conduct service there. And then on the 22nd, we'll be holding what we call the Gotaen, which is the commemoration or celebrating the birth of the founder of Shinran Shonin. So we'll be having a special service for that on the 22nd, and then just a regular service at the end of May. Plans are in the works right now for the Vancouver Island Obon Cemetery tour. We are planning on chartering a bus, and it will be from August 11th, which is a Thursday, to the 14th, Sunday. Now, as part of this trip, we've actually received a grant. This Obon Cemetery tour, every year, pre-pandemic, every year, we've been going over to Vancouver Island to visit some cemeteries. To give you the route, we go Chemainus, Port Alberni, Nanaimo, Cumberland, Port Alberni, Nanaimo, Chemainus, Duncan, and Ross Bay in Victoria. Okay, and it's over a course of 3 days that we'll be traveling through these areas. But this year, as many of you know, there was the Nikkei Survivors grant that the government had been, BC government has been providing. And so this Obon Cemetery Tour is annually sponsored by the BC Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Temples Federation. And so the Federation applied for this grant and they received close to $10,000 towards this trip, which will make it a lot cheaper for people to participate in. The survivors, if you are a survivor of World War II, then you will receive a little bit more of a break than those who are not survivors of the internment. And so once we get the details on, we will send out information. The problem that we're actually having is procuring enough hotel rooms for everybody to stay. I guess with the pandemic easing off, everybody's wanting to travel. So all the hotel rooms are being booked up. And so we're trying to figure out how we can get a busload of people over to the island. So we're in that process right now of trying to get the hotel rooms. Well, yeah, we'll take tents, sure, okay. I think that'll restrict who's gonna come though. So we're trying to get the hotels booked right now. And once we're able to do that, we actually have a bus ordered. So yeah, everything is in the works. So hopefully within a week or so, we'll have everything finalized. But it's not easy when you talk about 50 people trying to stay in one place or two places. It gets a little bit more complicated. Okay, so thank you all, and hope you enjoy. Looks like it's turning out to be a nice day. Enjoy the rest of the day. And please don't forget to come and pick up your homeo and make sure you take the right one and not somebody else's. Okay, thank you. And thank you all for joining by Zoom. Bye, everyone. No mando.
Thank you, Sensei.
Thank you, Grant.